Hey, what's going on?
Oh, another day.
It's 10, right?
It's 9:54, actually.
And I happen to notice you got your bike on the back there, huh?
You never know
You have
what's
some,
going to happen.
You have some alternate plans today?
You just never know is all I got to say. I mean, could be work, could be biking.
Man, to be the boss, man. Living the dream, living the dream.
Welcome back for episode 23 of Building a House Start to Finish. Today we finished the kitchen with a mix of wood and concrete counters, as well as building the floating shelves. If you've been following us from the beginning, we're almost done. 3 more episodes after this, and this house is complete. To get going with our wood counters, we first attached a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to the top of our cabinetry. We did this using pocket screws from the bottom instead of through the top, so that anytime later if someone wanted to remove this countertop, they could actually get to the screws. Next, we used an ample amount of wood glue to attach a 1/2 inch layer of plywood to the 3/4 inch base layer, and we staggered the joints in different places. To pull everything tight until the glue dried, we used a narrow crown stapler with 1-inch staples. We then used a flush trim bit with our router to make sure the top layer was the exact same shape as the bottom layer.
I'm going to very quickly describe to you why we're building this countertop the way that we're building it. Probably the first question somebody would ask is, why don't you just make a solid wood counter, like a butcher block or something? And that's a good question. And the answer is, solid wood expands and contracts with changes in temperature and humidity. We don't want that for this countertop because that could really cause problems. It could buckle or crack or do all kinds of wacky stuff that you don't want. It might look good the day that I leave, but in the future it could be problems. So this plywood, 2 layers, glued together, nailed together, it gives a very solid, very stable substrate for us to apply the maple top layer to. We're simply going to glue it down, we're going to shoot it with 23 gauge pin nails, and then put some epoxy finish on it. In essence, what we're trying to do is make like a giant piece of engineered wood flooring. They make engineered wood flooring for the exact same reasons. And as a matter of fact, you might notice that they actually make wide plank flooring mostly in engineered because of those reasons. It won't cup, it won't warp, it won't shrink, it just stays perfect forever.
Well, there you have it, and I couldn't have said it better myself. So on to making those maple top pieces. These are a 1/2 inch thick by about 5 inches wide to cover the counter. And we're using the 3 main tools that we use every time we do anything in the shop: the table saw, the joiner, and the planer. These things are the real workhorses of making any piece of wood into something usable. Last, each board is resawn on the bandsaw to take each piece down to a final thickness of 1/2 inch.
In order to make this operation safer and get more accurate cuts, I've attached some wooden homemade feather boards to a block of 4x4 and clamped it to the base of my saw. That will guide the boards in nice and tight against the fence without any fingers being within about 6 inches of the blade.
The next morning out on the job, our first project was to apply a piece of maple banding to the edge of the plywood substrate. And Jamie always keeps a bunch of these tiny paintbrushes in his truck to apply glue to smaller workpieces like this. These were attached using our 23 gauge pin nailer, and this thing has a 2-stage trigger instead of a safety that you have to depress, so you can do really accurate placement. And the nails look like pins. After all of the banding was attached, we then attached the planks to the top of the plywood substrate using glue and the same pin nailer. You can see why we did it this way. A wide plank countertop looks way more awesome. We then let the glue dry for 2 days and sanded the planks flat again. There was some cupping with the moisture. Then we started to apply our 2-part epoxy finish using this homemade bull float that Arlo made, and it worked great. This is what it looked like after the second coat of epoxy was applied, and it looks good from a distance but not up close. You really have to cut this down with a sander to make it smooth, and that's what Arlo did. He has a Festool sander that sucks up the dust and is really strong, and he spent about 2 or 3 hours per coat cutting it down and making it glossy smooth, and then we were ready for the top coat. For the top coat, we used a varnish by Total Boat, and there's 2 reasons we wanted to use a top coat. Number 1 is that we wanted a satin finish, which the epoxy is not, and we also needed a UV inhibitor, which the epoxy does not have in it. This will prevent the wood from yellowing. We applied the first coat with brushes, but for the second coat, Jamie called an override and wanted to put it on with a mini roller, which left an orange peel. And Jono and I were super skeptical until the very end that this would lay flat. But it did, and looked perfect. Good job, Jamie. Up next, let's take a look at how we built and installed those floating shelves you just saw in the last clip. During the framing phase of the project, we welded up these rods and plates and screwed them to the side of the studs in the kitchen. Now it's time to actually figure out how to build these floating shelves to make them work with the rods we installed. So first we make a dummy shelf.
Now for the sake of demonstration, I've clamped this piece of rod in a vise to represent our rod in the house. It's the same piece of material, and let's see if that will go on there. There's our dummy, and let's see what happens if we try to do this. Ooh, that was all right. So pull it back off and see how tough it is. Ooh, that's not bad. It's not bad. It is a little tough to go on. I think that's what we want.
After we confirmed that this would actually work, it was time to build the real shelves. We used maple plywood 3/4 inch thick with the spacers, and then simply banded the edges with some maple that matched the rest of the kitchen cabinets. This was glued and shot on with brad nails. We've built floating shelves in several houses over the years, but the way we did these, I think, was the easiest, strongest, and most adjustable way we've ever done it, so we'll probably keep doing it this way. After a good sanding and some finish, these shelves simply slipped onto the rods we had coming out of the wall. And that was it. Done. And finally, to finish out this kitchen, we're building 2 small pieces of concrete counter for either side of the stove. We started by cutting 2 pieces of 3/4 Advantech, the exact size we wanted the countertop pieces to be. We then covered the formed surface with clear packing tape so that the concrete would release easily.
Yeah. I once did a whole 4x8 table like this, which was insane.
Next, we made the sides of the form, which were also 3/4 Advantech, and wrapped them in clear packing tape as well. We attached them to the sides of the bottom piece, and this will make our form, making an 1 3/4 inch thick piece of concrete counter to match the depth of our wood counters. And if I had to do it again, I would use melamine instead of tape, but it worked. And last, we put a bead of caulk where the front edge of the countertop would be, so it would come out with a rounded edge. For the concrete mix, I simply used Quickcrete fast-setting concrete mix in a bag from Lowe's, and I also used some fiber reinforcement that I got at the concrete plant. And thankfully, I know the guys at the concrete plant. They also hooked me up with some plasticizer out of this giant jug. This will help the concrete flow easier without having to add too much water to it.
Alright, we got a splash of the plasticizer. Right there.
Terrible.
Hey, how's that smell, bub?
Sardines, old sardines.
This is gonna definitely have cats licking the counter. It's like liquid catnip. Great.
Plop it in there, Ray.
Once we had our concrete mix the way we liked it, which I'm not sure if it's right or not since this is the first time I've ever done concrete counters, we simply added it to the form and then jiggled it to get any bubbles out. We also tapped the side of the forms with a hammer the whole time to try to get any air bubbles to come out into the surface to prevent any pitting, which we still did have some pitting, and we'll show you how we dealt with that in just a minute.
You think that's tapping? It's son, he just goes launching off the side of his line.
We are gonna try to polish some concrete today. You still got smudges on your lens. You got fingerprints on the lens.
I think it's good.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. All right, we're putting some water on the piece of concrete that we're gonna try to polish, all right? I have never polished concrete before. Well, what I did is I went on Amazon. I found these abrasives here. These are wet diamond abrasives of sorted grits, 50, all the way up to 3,000.
Wow.
Now, I didn't count them to make sure that there's 3,000 in there, but that's what it says on it.
Right.
So we should be able to get a really fine polish with this. We are gonna try to use all of the grits. What we're gonna do is do the rough grit first though. We have a little bit of, there's some voids, these little spots, okay? There's some voids in there, and we're gonna fill the voids. But
Those are hard to avoid.
Yeah, they're hard to avoid. Oh, yes.
I stole that from him.
It's kind of early for that, but if just in case we expose any more voids with the coarse grit, we're gonna do that first.
So those go, let's show how those work.
All right, yeah, so we got a hook and loop here. Wow, that's really on there good. 50 grit. There we go. We got water
number
on
one.
here, and we'll give it the first. Now I got stuff on the ends for sure. Wow! Far down we should go. Maybe one more grit. And maybe we should do this edge here. That's nice. Like that. I forgot my tank today. Yeah, circular's good.
After we went over both of the pieces of countertop with the coarsest grit, it was time to fill the voids that we had. And to do this, we actually just used some floor leveler that we had left over laying in the shop. Good.
Nice slurry.
Okay.
You doing the
Gonna do log toss?
yeah, you doing the pole toss today?
Hand rub. All right, that's enough. Whoa, yeah. I mean, it needs to get actually like,
Oh, wow.
this is what we're talking about. This is hand rub.
Your skin's gonna come off your hand.
It'll grow back.
I bet you what I'm doing is just as good.
Sorry guys, Jason totally dropped the ball on this one. That's one way to do it.
I mean, that's gonna rub off.
Yep. There's one done. Let's do number 2.
Number 2.
And we let them sit overnight. By the next morning, our filler had dried, and Jason took a small block of wood to take off the excess material before sanding with the finer grits. You know what they say?
One way to do it, bub. Yes.
Feeling smooth. What grit are you on there?
This is 8 honey.
8 honey? Oh, where are you gonna go to 3,000?
And after running through all of the grits of the sanding disc, it was time to install. But first, a little signature. We like to sign random places in our houses, including inside the framing and other places that will be concealed later just for fun. To adhere the countertop pieces to the cabinet, we simply just use some trim grip adhesive and then set the countertop piece right on top.
Oh, don't get any on you now. There it is. A little wiggle, a little jiggle. It's stuck for life.
It's not in the video, but we also sealed these tops with some Ching countertop sealer and wax to keep them from ever getting stained, which could happen. And that's it. Our homeowner Tina now has a beautiful and durable modern kitchen with wood and concrete countertops, perfect for cooking and entertaining. So invite us over, Tina. We'd love to hang out. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to check back next week where we build this steel handrail from scratch, install a beautiful cable rail, and learn lots of stuff about welding. Thanks for watching.